I know people were very curious as to which side of this Darren Till Jorge Masvidal main event you fell on. You and I have obviously known Jorge for a while. We have covered his career extensively, dating to the Bellator days, and I'm really happy for him to have this moment. Of course, we'll get into everything that happened after the fact. A lot of different angles we can attack when it comes to Darren Till and his immediate future, but all hail Jorge Gamebred Masvidal, sort of a lifetime achievement type of win for him this weekend, and given my personal experiences, Ken Flo, couldn't happen to a better guy, honestly.
You know, this was a very tough fight for Darren Till, despite that huge size advantage. I didn't love this fight for him. Jorge Masvidal has a ton of experience, but I got to say, it seemed like he was a little emotional. He was getting a little wild against Darren Till. But eventually, once he settled down into that second round, he made the proper adjustments. And Darren Till always gets away with just framing, and he doesn't quite frame properly. He doesn't protect his face. He just kind of sticks his hands out there. And he gets away with it because he has such a long reach and he's so much bigger than everybody. You know, people don't look for that blitz. Jorge Masvidal made the adjustments and because cut an angle when he broke off from being in the pocket against Masvidal. He got caught with that left hook. And this was something that I thought Jeremy Stephens was going to try to do against Zabit Magomedsharipov because Zabit does the same thing. He backs straight off, and he has that height and reach where he gets away with it. Someone's going to get onto that, and they're going to throw more than just one shot. And that's exactly what Masvidal did. Landed a huge shot, and that left hook just put Darren Till out. Now, he's 24 years old. It's not a huge deal, but the fact that he got knocked out cold like that at this point in his career concerned me. What a win for Jorge Masvidal.
Right. For Darren Till, I think a lot of people are rushing to judgment in terms of, can he become a UFC welterweight champion? Is he going to move up to 185 pounds? What is his future as contender? But you never like to see a 24-year-old concussed like that and knocked out cold like that. But I still think the ceiling is very high for Darren Till. I'm not willing to sit here and say he can't be a UFC champion. I'm just not sure it's going to happen at 170 pounds. You know, he made 171 pounds. You saw Mark Ratner with a quick trigger there when he announced the weight. I just am not sure that this is a guy who's going to be able to sustain excellence while making this cut perpetually down to 170 pounds. As far as Jorge Masvidal is concerned, and we're not done on Darren Till just yet, but he looked to be in the shape of his life, Kenny, and I know he took a year off. He went and did that reality show at an undisclosed location. Physically, this just looked like a different Gamebred, right? A six-pack, right? He just looked to be in a different type of shape. Not that he isn't in good shape, and I know you called a 5-round fight that he was involved in South Korea, right? It's not that he hasn't been in shape, but the minute he took his shirt off to do his open workout or whatever it was, I felt like we were dealing with a different Gamebred. I think the time off really served him well, and I think it just gave him a lot of confidence mentally too. I just think it put him in a great headspace entering the fight. And yeah, he got cracked early by Darren Till, and this could be a different narrative that we're dealing with here on Monday morning, but I don't know if I'm reading too much into it. I thought Masvidal was absolutely in the shape of his life going in.
I thought he looked great, and I agree with you. I think that time off probably served him well. I think when you get a guy like Masvidal who's been fighting since he was a teenager, you know, you're going to have these ups and downs, I think, as far as motivation and the intensity of how you train. Masvidal has always had the skills. I don't think that's ever been a question for Masvidal. I think the big question mark for Masvidal at times has been his motivation and how hard he's trained for certain fights. Right. And I think you saw that he was motivated by this challenge, and I think he's motivated by the big challenges. When he's facing a middle-of-the-road guy, I don't think we get that super hungry Masvidal, and I totally get that. This guy wants a challenge. He wants to know that he's working towards something big, whether it's a big payday or getting closer to a title shot. And I think this fight against Darren Till brought out the best of him, the best in him. And despite him being much smaller, I think his speed was the difference, his intelligence, and his cage experience.
You hear guys like Mike Brown from American Top Team just rave about Masvidal and skill for skill, how they believe he's one of the best fighters that they've ever come across. You know, that it says nothing about his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game that is obviously there if needed. I just think he's such an interesting case, right? Because a lot of people thought if he was going to make a championship run in the UFC, it was going to happen at 155 pounds, not that he could move up to welterweight and contend. I remember May 1st, 2009. It was the 5th time I had ever called mixed martial arts, Kenny, and he lost by inverted triangle to Toby Imada. And he turned purple, went unconscious, right? He's certainly not the tap-in type. I remember, I don't know if it was that fight or a prior Bellator appearance, but he weighed in at 158 pounds, and Bjorn Rebney was like, "Hey man, like I need you to cut the final 2 pounds." And he's basically like, "Fuck you, Bjorn. I'm not cutting anymore. Like I'm going to fight at 158 pounds, and you're just going to deal with it." He has always beat to the tune of his drum. He is very much an individual, and I think what happened after the fight very much speaks to Jorge Masvidal and who he is. But in terms of his championship trajectory, Kenny, I always thought that if he could have the purpose and have the motivation that you talk about, that he could make a run at 155 pounds. I just never envisioned him making a run at welterweight. You knock out a recent title challenger like this. I know Colby Covington's going to be next for Kamaru Usman. What's your appetite to see Masvidal expedite a title run here at 170 pounds?
I think he'll probably need one more fight at least before he, gets a shot at the title. Maybe he can be a plan B for if someone gets injured or whatever, but listen, I think he has the skills to be able to pull it off. I think he's always been a fighter. He has that fighter mentality, as we saw in that interview. He's never shy for that. And I think despite him being undersized, because he has that fighter's mentality and because he's going to have his full capacities, right. I think it's a great weight class for him. Can he fight at 155 and be one of the best? Absolutely. Will he have all of his energy and strength? Probably not. And to do that consistently, like you said, for Darren Till to be able to do that at 170 is going to be very, very difficult for him. So, I think he's probably best suited at welterweight at this point. The fact that he's knocking out much larger opponents like Darren Till says a lot. The fact that he went, the full distance against a guy like Damian Maia, who is just an absolute assassin on the ground, says a lot as well.
Yeah. And I think that this is the biggest win of Jorge Masvidal's career, and I don't much care that people disagree. I think everyone's entitled to their opinion. I think the win that Masvidal had a couple of years ago over Donald Cerrone was obviously a finish and a huge win. But I think when you go on the road to England as a near 3-1 underdog in a main event against somebody who just fought for the title, relative to what this win does for him in the division, I think this is the biggest win of Jorge Masvidal's career. All power to him. Couldn't happen to a better guy. Now, I'm sure some people are going to see what he did after the fact and say, oh, it could certainly happen to a better guy. So if you missed it, Jorge Masvidal was doing an interview for ESPN Plus with Laura Sanko when Leon Edwards said something, and Jorge went over there, Kenny, and initially his hands were behind his back, but when he got closer, he became ready to fight. Threw the three-piece with a soda, appeared to open up a cut underneath the left eye of Leon Edwards, and he left the 0-2, 2-0, after a win over Leon Edwards. Now, there's a lot to say about this, right? I'm hoping that the punishments are going to either be non-existent or not too swift, right? I mean, I know this is forgettable. Certainly there's something that needs to be addressed when it comes to security after events and keeping fighters within the same division away from each other when potentially there could be some heat. What was your initial takeaway on what transpired, the fight after the fight, so to speak?
Well, listen, I think fighters need to be way more careful as far as approaching another fighter, okay? When you fight and you win, if you get a guy like a Jorge Masvidal who is, a guy who's never going to be shy to throw down, you don't just you talk crap. Like if you're going to talk crap to somebody, what's the point? Are you talking crap just to kind of get in their head for a future potential fight, or are you actually barking because you want to bite? Masvidal, if you're barking at him and he's barking back, he's going to fight you, period.
No doubt.
And that's the thing. And I think, yes, security should be much better, but fighters need to understand a little bit more that, if you're going in someone's face or if you're going to talk crap, you better be ready to throw down. And a guy like Masvidal isn't going to back down from something like that. So either shut your mouth or, be ready for those consequences. Can Leon Edwards actually be upset that he went up to a dude like Gamebred Masvidal in his face? Like, what did he expect to happen? That they were going to discuss this and kind of debate the merits of each other and then, talk. I mean, he was going to throw down. You get in another fighter's face, be ready to throw down, period.
Right. It seems, and I agree with everything you said, it seemed out of character for Leon Edwards. And I don't know if there were people in his entourage that were sort of pushing him to engage. Because if the end result, or if the end goal for Leon Edwards is to get a fight against Jorge Masvidal, then certainly now there are legs for a fight between these two. I happen to believe that for Masvidal, given that he beat Darren Till, even though I know Leon Edwards felt like he deserved the Darren Till fight, I feel like Masvidal at this point is past the Leon Edwards fight, and I say that with all due respect to Leon, who has one of the longest active winning streaks in this welterweight division, 7 after he beat Gunnar Nelson. But if Leon Edwards was trying to pick a fight with the Till Masvidal winner, mission accomplished, right? Maybe it didn't go down the way he expected to, but now I think there are going to be a lot of people who want to see these two fighters settle their differences inside the octagon. So, for Edwards, I don't know. I don't know if that was the end game or not for him. Certainly could have gone about it a better way. And I think there's blame to go around, too. I mean, for Masvidal, hopefully he's not losing that bonus money and this doesn't end up being something that sort of jeopardizes his immediate contention. But it kind of is what it is.
Exactly. And it's it's the same thing that happened with Khabib in a lot of ways. I don't make an excuse for Masvidal. I don't make an excuse for Khabib necessarily. But at the end of the day, these guys are fighters. And, we're in this day and age now where people think they could just talk crap and no repercussions are going to take place or whatever. Stop. Right. Stop with this bullshit. And, a lot of the guys thinking they can get away with this, you're going to get cracked. You're going to get cracked, especially by a guy like a Masvidal.
Well, if Jorge Masvidal walks over to Leon Edwards and Ray Longo is back there, you got to think there's some pause for Masvidal. What do you think, Ray? I mean, have you ever been involved in a backstage encounter like what we saw after the fight between Jorge Masvidal and Leon Edwards?
I think back in the kickboxing days might have been a couple, but nothing MMA that sticks out in my mind. But it's like trying to think. It's like that nitwit that wanted to take the picture, to take the selfie with the jaguar at the zoo. That's it.
Oh, right.
You know what's coming.
Right.
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 I
mean, Ken Flo's pretty mild-mannered, but I can assure you in that situation, he doesn't care about losing his bonus money. He's going to fight for what he believes in, and I'd imagine you would do the same.
Yeah. I think so, 100%. I mean, and again, let the guy – what are you interrupting the guy for? He's doing an interview. He's coming off a great victory.
Right. Emotions are running high. Emotions run high after a fight,
And he walked very slowly over there with his hands behind his back. There was plenty of time for a lot of people to step in and whatever, do what they had to do. But, you have to know that. I don't know. To me, it's a no-brainer.
Right, and I think if Leon Edwards is rewarded with a Masvidal fight, right, then for him the ends justify the means. Paul Felder wants to fight Al Iaquinta right now, okay? He feels like Al owes him a fight, okay? Al is moving on and wants to challenge for the interim championship or wants to challenge for the title, right? So you can argue that for Paul, if he wants to get that Raging Al fight, he should go on an absolute rampage on social media, not necessarily cutting Iaquinta down, but go crazy trying to get some heat behind that fight. Like, I feel for fighters in this day and age, Ray, because Paul's not going to do that, and he's not going to get the fight.
Right.
So
right.
I'm just saying, in Leon's defense, if he gets the fight, the ends will justify the means.
Well, again, and it goes back to what we always say, until they look, it's up to the UFC to set a precedent, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If they reward that guy with a fight, then they're setting a precedent. I mean, Darren Till wins a very controversial decision over Wonder Boy, misses weight by 5 pounds.
Right.
And what do? They give him a title shot.
Right.
So when this shit blows up and the guy, I just think, man, if you have any belief in karma, the shit's coming back. It's going to come back. You know what I mean? That's it. But why are we rewarding guys for doing the wrong thing? There's no repercussions for your actions at this point.
Ray, you're absolutely correct. And listen, setting a precedent, they've already set a precedent, and that's the problem is we're in this Conor McGregor era that, if you do talk trash, whether you deserve the fight or not, you get the nod. So when fighters are looking and they're seeing the rankings and they're going, okay, I'm number 4, I should fight number 5 or number 3, and those fights aren't happening, of course they're going to do that because they are being rewarded. The guys who are talking trash and are doing these stunts are being rewarded. So how do you get out of that mold now? How does a quiet guy who wins all the fights that he's supposed to win get the fights when he gets these other guys, these newcomers? They have 2 or 3 fights in the UFC and they're getting the title shot. They have to play that game now. So I don't know. What do you do with your fighters? Is this something that are you trying to encourage them to be authentic? Are you encouraging them to hype up their fights? What do you do in this era, Ray, with your guys?
I mean, it's not something that we're talking about, but I try to support them whichever direction they're going in, first of all, as a coach. But we really do try to, aim for authenticity. You know what I mean? If a guy got out of control here, he probably wouldn't be here. If it really got like nutty or I don't know, it would be tough. But like when years ago, Al did a couple of things. We're not saying, "Oh, that was fucking great," and no, we're talking to a guy, dude, maybe it's wrong, and blah blah blah. But I mean, now I'm starting to agree with all of this shit that he did. He just wanted to get paid. Right. He wasn't even looking for a fight. Just pay me what I'm going to fight for you. I'll put on a good show. Just pay me. And if this is what I got to do, and I don't think he ever did anything that was inappropriate. You know what I mean? If a guy's, dissing people at a fighting and he never fought before and and then he get criticized for it. But, look, you have to be able to take criticism too. And I don't know. I think Al really just spoke his mind. He made some good points. I don't even think I was into it back then, but now in retrospect, I'm starting or in hindsight, I'm really looking at it like, you know what? The kid was right. Just give me my money. He's never let anybody down, and whatever. I don't know. It's a weird position. I don't like it. Again, like when my guys do it. I'm not saying like my guys. They're all their own guys, but I'm not in agreement with a lot of stuff that goes on. I think even Chris, man. I think he made a comment one time about Bisping's vision. Not cool. That's not cool by anybody that was around. You know what I mean? I think he made up, he apologized for it or whatever, but if you think that we're condoning that shit, definitely not happening.